Hello and welcome back to Strange Stories with the Seeker and the Skeptic. On today's episode, we interview Mindy Jackson. Mindy is a psychic and a clinical therapist who has had a lifetime of strange experiences. We go on a deep dive with Mindy about where high strangeness started in her life from a very young age and how she developed more into her abilities and how she uses it in her life going forward. Her thoughts about Sophia Christos, which is divine feminine Christ consciousness. So we talk about a lot of different things. We even talk about Bigfoot. So it's a very interesting and entertaining conversation where we just explore a whole lot of the weird, the strange, the mystical, and the magical. So enjoy.
Okay, so generally, when we first start a conversation like this, we try to give our listeners kind of a background of where somebody got to where they are. What the basis of where they are begins. So when it comes to you, and what is your origin story when it comes to departure from the mundane, like not you know
Well, what I can say is, for one, if anybody knows anything about earth grid work, I came from an area that has been deemed a cancer cluster now. And when I looked at the ley lines, it is it's a convergent point, not a nodal point. Well, it is considered a node, but it's a convergent point rather than a cross point. And oftentimes those areas tend to hold dense, heavy energy. Sometimes they're kind of like vortex energy. So there was a lot of accidents. There's a lot of history there, and a lot of childhood cancer. And when we did a survey of every home in the school district, every single home had been affected by having a member of that family or that home either had cancer and passed away, had cancer and beat it, or were currently undergoing cancer. So the
Wow.
University of Alabama and Auburn University both deemed it a cancer cluster. So there's your environmental
Mhm.
piece, your earth-oriented piece. I was very much a nature child growing up, and I have been blessed not to have any cancer. We did have some in my family, but um, my journey, I would say, some would like to say it started with a near-death experience at age 5, but I really say it started with a trauma at age 3 that I really had forgotten about over the years, until not too long ago. And it was a situation where my mom, my sister, she was about a year old at the time, she was asleep apparently, and I were standing in a closet hiding from a monster. This was my 3-year-old mind. I didn't quite have a concept of death yet, but I had a concept of hurt. So there was no door on this closet. It was an old 70s bead curtain.
Mm.
I can still hear the sound of those beads bumping together, and the smell in that closet and all that. And um, I think my sister must have been asleep because my mom was holding her, and then I was standing by my mom's her left leg, and she had her arm wrapped around my head and her hand was tapping my mouth telling me, "Shh, don't breathe. Be still." And what do we do in the moment that we have a traumatic experience? We hold our breath and we go rigid so that, the jaguar doesn't jump out of the jungle and hear us and get us, right? So in my experience, I remember being frozen in fear, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. I was afraid if I did anything to make a sound, the monster would find us and it would be my fault that everybody got hurt. And some part of me had this, I used to say it was an imaginary experience, but I've been rethinking that now. Had this experience of flying through the house to the front door where the monster was. I didn't even know it was at the front door, but that's where it was.
Mhm.
And like socking it in the nose, and it like shattered and went away. And in reality, my grandmother who lived with us uh, told us later, of course, that this was a sheriff's deputy that had come to our house and wanted some information from my mom, and my mom did not want to give that to that
Mhm.
sheriff's deputy, because that sheriff's deputy was part of the problem, apparently. So she had held him at the front door, and he asked if my mom and my sister and I were home, and my granny told him no. And so I guess he poked his head in and was like, okay, I don't see her here, kids. I'm assuming she's, telling the truth. So he went away. So, looking back on that now, I have to question, did I have an astral experience
Mhm.
there, right? Moving forward at age 5, I have a summer birthday. And we oftentimes would go to the national forest where we had a recreational area and a lake near our home, and we would go swimming. And it had to have been the summer I turned 5. Uh, I had a near-death experience. I drowned in the lake and was surprised that I was able to swim underwater without holding my nose
Mhm.
and without moving my arms. Because, I was at that age where I would like hold my nose and kind of dip underwater and
Mhm.
like move one arm and like, look, mom, I can swim underwater, right? So I remember in the moment that I was floating towards the shiny thing on the bottom of the lake that I had this thought, I'm swimming underwater without holding my nose and without having to move my arms. And it was just a gentle forward motion, and I get nearly there, and I can see like there's like this weird opening, and I can see these really big bright flowers, and I can see these what I know now are light beings, but it was as if like I couldn't see any distinctive features to say, oh, this is that person and this is that person.
Mhm.
I just had a knowing that I knew who they were, right? Um, so they were these, like silhouettes of people, but they were made of white light. And I thought, well, maybe it was angels, right? It could have been that too. Who knows?
Mhm.
Um, and somewhere in my memory, I must have thought about Atlantis and Lemuria, because I had the thought, am I looking at Atlantis or Lemuria? And I don't know if I saw a cartoon or I heard something or it's just some knowing that I had. I don't know. Um, so, anyways, I get pulled back through the black water, and I'm yanked up and set sideways on my float, and I'm coughing and choking and crying. I'm pissed off because I was almost there. Um, so that happened. And then a few months later, right after I started kindergarten, I had encephalitis from chicken pox that didn't break out. And I had what should have killed me, a fever of 105 for 4 days straight.
Wow.
Yeah, and this one little nurse started feeding me popsicles, and that's how my fever broke from the inside out. But during that time, I was doing this little swim like movement and floating down the hallways and going and looking at different things, and would come back and I could see myself laying in the bed, and I would be like, how am I there and here at the same time? And then I would do this like little weird dive, and then it was like a sensation similar to waking up, but it wasn't exactly the same as waking up from a dream. And I would tell my mom, and she told me later, years later, that there was consistency in what I was telling her. So she would go and validate and come back, and she would ask questions. And what we decided, she didn't tell me at the time, of course, I didn't know the term, was that I was having out of body experiences because my
Mhm.
consciousness was pulling away from my body and doing something to protect my brain and my nervous system. So, what I say is, my start in life started off with a changed neurological system. I was already a high frequency being coming into this world. And instead of the conditioning and the controls of the world sort of clogging the channel, so to speak, what I went through, it didn't let it clog the channel, or I didn't get the memo. If I did, I didn't care. because I wound up having a lot of, paranormal, spiritual, mystical experiences growing up, and I had no empathic boundaries.
Hmm.
So, I was that kid in school that I would feel everybody's shit thinking it was mine and didn't know it wasn't mine. And I didn't understand why I was upset. But then all it took was one kid looking at me wrong, and I wanted to go home with a headache and a stomach ache. So, I grew up the weird kid. But, being intelligent and being able to perform well in academics kind of saved me in a way. And that's
Sure.
what led me eventually to go into college. And I knew I wanted to be a healer of some kind, but I didn't know what. I tried to shut all this down in my teens and early college days and couldn't. And, partying was easier than going to class the first couple of years. And so I kind of had to come home and get my shit straight, and took a year off and gypsied around a little bit. And when I decided to go back to school and just at least figure out my core curriculum, and I had changed my major a couple of times, I thought, well, I'll finish up my core curriculum. Maybe I'll decide what I want to do. And I took my first psychology class at the University of West Georgia, which is weird because life took me full circle. My office is a mile down the road from the college
Uh,
on the same street. Um, but I took my very first psychology class and realized this was a different psychology. So the program I went to was humanistic transpersonal psychology, and it aligned with who I was. And life has just been a crazy journey ever since. And I started speaking publicly in May. Um, After the last 3 years were a major sort of like culmination of things that shifted me into a different kind of frequency, into my what I call my Sophia Christos self, where when we do that, we kind of transcend duality at that point. So now I'm speaking, sharing my story of what I went through early on. Of course, I went through other traumas growing up, family with mental illness, substance abuse issues, had my own problems with I won't say mental illness. I would say I had PTSD for
yeah.
sure. And trauma does magnify your intuition.
Mm.
Um, and then I had some traumas as an adult, and played around, doing the drugs and the alcohol in college, and had crazy experiences with that. And let me just say, anybody listening, if you are highly sensitive, highly psychic, be very mindful of what substances you play around with, right? So,
Why do you say that? I just want to.
well, what I can say is that if you're not prepared for an experience that might shake you, something that you've never experienced before, and you're rooted in fear, here's why I say this, okay? If your intuition has been magnified by trauma, and that trauma is still in your energetic body, what you're going to do is you're going to have your intuition scanning your environment for a threat constantly. So if you go into, say, a psychedelic experience or something, your energetic body is drawing in something threatening. But if you heal that trauma, if you transmute that energy from your nervous system, from your energetic body, and with my clients, I shift them out of that fear-based by through the healing process, they learn to love themselves. And in that self love, they shift that intuition into love based, which is expansive. When you have expansive intuition, instead of searching for like the nearest threat, you're searching for guidance, you're searching for connection, you're searching for meaning making. And that elevates you energetically and spiritually.
Mm.
So that's why I say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Whatever you're aligned with is the experience that you're going to call in. Yeah.
Yes, and it doesn't mean that just because you have trauma, or you've experienced trauma, or you have unhealed trauma or anything like that, that you're going to have a bad
Hmm.
experience. It just means that you're more likely to
Hmm.
if you aren't coming from a place of love. And I have certification to prepare people for plant medicine journeys and then to help them integrate it afterwards. And one of the big key elements of preparation is learning how to breathe through with the life force breath, not just your normal breathing, so that in those moments when you're physically uncomfortable, in those moments where your emotions come to the surface, you're not coloring the experience that your spirit wants to have with all of this other like low frequency, low density, heavy density stuff that could cause you to panic or whatever, because that's gonna mess up your experience basically.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. So going back to those experiences that you had, the out of body experiences as a child, it sounds like what you're saying about in the hospital, like your mother kind of believed it. Am I getting
Yes.
that accurate? Okay.
Yes.
So
Yes.
how did that play out for you? Did that like encourage anything in terms of like, having those experiences, or did, you said like as a teenager, you try to shut them down. So I'm just kind of
Mhm.
curious of like how that played out for you.
Well, and I grew up in a family of women who, let me see how I can say this, didn't entirely shut down their intuitive capabilities
Mhm.
because of the controls and the systems of control over time and the conditioning, but they did keep it quiet, right? So it was acceptable in our home to talk about, we always talked about what we dreamed the night before, or
Mhm.
if we had an intuitive experience, if we were visited, if we went to some crazy thing. In fact, one of the big ones for us was the night that the Indonesian tsunami happened on Christmas. Like, I think it was actually the day after Christmas, or the night after or something. I had stayed awake, not able to sleep because I kept having this experience of feeling like I was floating in water, kind of like that feeling you get like you've been swimming all day and then you lay down for a nap
Mhm.
and you feel like you're in the water kind of
Yeah.
thing. So I was having that experience and I kept having this, I could hear like some distant screaming a little bit, but it wasn't so overwhelming that it was scary. It was just there. And that was not my focus. But what my focus was is I kept reaching down and feeling like I was grabbing things out of the water and pulling them, grab and pull. And it was like I kept doing that over and over and over again all night. And the next morning, I was so bleary eyed. I was, living with my mom at the time, my mom and my grandmother. I get up the next morning and I said, Mama, I didn't sleep last night, like, and told her what happened. And she said, Are you kidding me? And I said, What? She said, I had the same experience.
Mhm.
Like, what? So my granny, who lived with us, right, she gets up and she's like, Did any of y'all sleep last night? And then we turn on the news and we see, and
Wow.
there's this image I saw of someone doing the same motion,
Hmm.
and it stopped me dead in my tracks. And we just all like just looked at each other, like no
Hmm.
words at that point. And it made me wonder when people are crying out in that moment of crisis, some people go to prayer, they scream to God, whatever. There's an energetic pulse, I believe, goes out, and those who can respond do. But I don't think many people are very conscious of being able to do that. They just think, man, I slept like shit last night, right?
Hmm.
So we travel astrally in our dreams. And if you don't go to sleep and something like that happens, it's possible. I think we still do on a level that we might not be fully conscious of. So to go back to your question, I grew up in a house where the reason some of the experiences were supported and even encouraged was my granny's father was Native American. He was Creek Indian. And so she grew up hearing about, quote, the seeing eye. That's what she knew of it. Of course, as I got older and studied things and had words like claircognizance and
Hmm.
clairvoyance and clairsentience, she would like nod her head and we'd have conversations and things like that. So um we didn't talk about it much outside of the house. And I certainly didn't, talk to other people about my experiences much until I was in college.
Hmm. What made you as a teenager want to start trying to shut it down?
Well, I mean, I had gone my whole educational career at that point, not fitting in. And of
Okay.
course, like
Yeah.
any other teenager, I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be kind of normal and
Mhm.
emotionally stable, but I was not because I was feeling everybody's stuff and
Yep.
thinking it was mine. I was awkward. I was socially awkward because of the neurological changes. What I know now is I was neurodivergent, but on the HSP, which is highly sensitive person side of the spectrum, which is kind of like the other side of the spectrum from autism disorders. So, I definitely was socially awkward. I read way too much into situations because I was reading all the little micro
Mhm.
expressions from everybody. I was hyper vigilant, which caused me, especially with all the emotional disturbance, caused me to like create these narratives in my head. And you'll hear kids say, well, they don't like me. Well, I was the kid that did know they didn't like me. I knew they were talking about me behind my
Right.
back, right? I didn't know exactly what they might be saying, but
Mhm.
I knew who was. And so that made it really hard because the rejection sensitivity that I grew up with because of all of that was very real.
Sure.
So trying to shut it down, trying not to be weird, all of that, and it just didn't work. Now I revel in my weirdness. I'm so grateful now that I didn't fit in
Mhm.
because I wasn't meant to, and I wouldn't be who I am today had I.
Right. What helps you get there? I mean, I think that's something that a lot of people
Get
struggle
where
with, to like embracing who you are, embracing your gifts, embracing your weirdness. I think that's something
I
a lot of
think.
people struggle with.
Yeah, I think for me it definitely came through my college studies once I got to University of West Georgia because humanistic transpersonal psychology speaks to these kind of things. It's sort of like saying the paradigm is we're spirit first and everything else manifests from that. And so things I took really cool classes like music, mind, and art, psychology of dreams. I
Mm,
took classes like Buddhist theory, children's spirituality, along with clinical classes because I needed a practical route to make money
right.
because I was a single mom at the time, also. And I did both my bachelor's degree and my master's degree in the same program because I loved it that much.
Hmm.
So to get there, I would say part of it was a process because I had shame and I had fear of rejection for being different, for being weird, like these walls. And when I got to this program and I started realizing that everybody else was kind of like me, I was like them, like we're all the weird tribe. And it was like I finally found a place where I fit in and I could talk about some of these things. And even still, I had, experiences that I didn't hear other people talk about or anything as similar. And in fact, I was on a walk not too long ago with a college friend that is also a practicing therapist here in town, and she she made the comment talking about going back to those college days. She goes, you remember back when everybody thought you were weird." And I went, "Yeah, they just had to catch up. Now they're catching up." So I think really it was like finding my tribe in a way, right? It
Sure.
was like, and that just so happened to start really in college. And I'll tell you what, I have friends now that I've had for 25, 30 years
Hmm.
because of that.
It's
Very
wonderful.
close friends. Yes.
Yeah.
So one thing, and just kind of like a point of clarification, just in case someone hearing this has not come across this term before. A little while right in the middle of that, you used the phrase Sophia Christos. What does that mean?
Yes.
Where does that come
Yes.
from? Just in case somebody is just not familiar.
Yes. So the basic premise is that it comes from Gnosticism, right? And so it's a term that is easier for a lot of people especially in the Western world to kind of understand or at least research. And then once they read about it, understand about it, whatever, it makes a little more sense because there is such a Christian influence in our Western culture. So the Gnostics, they talk about Sophia being basically, and I'm not going to go into all of it, it would be too much, but Sophia is the divine feminine embodiment of wisdom. And the Christos is that divine masculine. And the both of them are in Christ consciousness. So it's a state of consciousness. So if you can think of it in terms of not just a state of consciousness, but a bandwidth of frequency, so to speak. And so when we live from our heart space, our heart has a huge like electromagnetic field, right? And so our energy body is it's almost determined by, in a way, that frequency from our heart, from our heart chakra. And so, like, when you are choosing compassion in the face of you could have no mercy, right? Unforgiveness. When you choose love over fear, when you choose, like you're consciously choosing to live from your heart, you're elevating that frequency, you're opening yourself up for that wisdom to come in. And you don't have to have a college degree to be wise. You don't have to have an IQ of 140
Yeah.
plus to be wise, right? So it's really based on your ability to understand and experience and make it ma- ma- give it meaning in a way that helps you feel alive and connected, because heart is about being connected with self, others, nature, God, whatever you want to call God, creator, source. I say all at different times. um so that Sophia Christos, now let me expound on that just a little bit here, because if you think back historically over the last 2000 plus years, um, what we saw happen was the suppression of the divine feminine. We've seen that because of the systems of control, the Council of Nicaea, the Roman, church at the time, the Roman Empire is the way it was put, right? Because of the sovereignty that divine feminine holds, she can't be controlled easily. So they had to do something that would take away that sovereignty and make the feminine believe that they were powerless instead of empowered. Power over is masculine, empowered is feminine. So taking away from the understanding many cultures had of the female alone, just the female being a sacred portal, they took the sacredness out. They made Mary Magdalene a prostitute. There was the Jezebel stories and all of that, and that was pretty far from the truth. But so you look at the Inquisition and the Salem witch trials, and then you look at various other repeated narratives that say the feminine, anything associated with the feminine that's natural is evil. Let's blame everything on Eve, right? Well, no, what if it was Lilith? Just kidding. Anyways, so there's been this narrative of don't look at that over there, it's of the devil. Don't do this, it's evil. When most of the things that are being pointed to have to do with that divine feminine.
Mhm.
We even got the idea of darkness means evil, when in fact the divine feminine holds both light and dark. She holds
Mhm.
light and shadow, right? So when we reactivate now, because it's been so long, all of that empowerment, wisdom, knowledge, understanding, intuitive capabilities, healing capabilities, all of that was, it kind of like went dormant in our DNA, especially for the females, right? Because we have that mitochondria that connect us all the way back to the original women, whoever they were, right? So in that dormant DNA, or it's kind of like what I hear the catchphrase these days, is codes, right? Codes for this and codes for that.
Mhm.
Well, if you can imagine, it's just a field of knowledge that was so suppressed and then repressed in a way, turned into a shadow even. Um, it's laying dormant, so to speak, in our DNA, and that can be reactivated. And we're at a point in history, so to speak, and a point in the universe where sociologically humanity's at a tipping point, and we're all kind of like seeing through the bullshit, and we see the conditioning, we're seeing the the control systems. We're all sick and tired of it. And we're tired of being oppressed. Women, a lot of times, are like, why should I have endometriosis? Why should I have trouble conceiving? Why should I have uterine cancer? Any of these problems that really shouldn't exist. And I see so many women going, and this is not to the negation of the men, so I'll come back to that. So many women are like, there just seems to be so much more that I'm missing, and I can't put my finger on it, and yada, yada, yada. And to me, what I hear is like in Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed, she talks
Mm-hmm.
about the cheetah looking over the zoo walls, looking into the wild, and she's like, I'm a cheetah, god damn it.
Yeah.
And that's the way I think many women in
Yeah.
our world are feeling, is like there's just something
More.
more
Mhm.
primal, real than this BS that I'm told. And so we're conditioned to believe what feminine and masculine mean, and it really doesn't have as much to do with gender as people think, right? It has to do with frequencies, energies, and traits. And so what we have today is we have the trickle down effect of this imbalance where the masculine was venerated, honored, turned into, you're more virile, you're more masculine and macho if you like slam into somebody or box them in a ring or whatever. And if you can get that girl, right? All of that has promoted what we now can see as more toxic masculinity. And a lot of the men, even the more healthy men, can look and say, um, yeah, we don't really know what divine masculine's supposed to look like outside of religion. And that's a little sad, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if that's the way you need to go, fine. I'm not touting religion entirely. Um, so what we have now is the frequencies, the energies that we are experiencing here on the earth globally are shifting our bodies, our DNA, our consciousness in such a way that those codes are starting to kind of like unlock.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's kind of like as each feminine embraces that divine essence again and chooses to live from the Christ conscious, the heart space, it's like giving a permission slip to the next woman and the next woman, or the next feminine, the next feminine, right? And as that happens, as the feminine heals through all those generational and ancestral traumas, transmutes all that dense, heavy energy that's locking that DNA down, embraces the knowledge that's being shared now, the knowledge that's at our fingertips that wasn't for even our grandmothers, right? um, those permission slips keep going out, and then more knowledge comes in. Women are like, yeah, me too. So we got connection again, right? We've got that sense of community again. And as the feminine heals and steps into that divinity, the masculine naturally follows, because the masculine is the provider and the protector of the feminine. She's magnetic, he's electric, so to speak. And I know that's gender terms, but y'all hang with me anyway. So the masculine's job, so to speak, universal law, is to follow the feminine, to support the feminine. The feminine being the nurturing, the intuitive, the creative, the community builder, and the masculine being the provider, the protector, the goal oriented, the structure to prevent the chaos that the feminine can have. And I don't mean that in some pathological, hysterical way. I mean that in that we have this divine essence that can bring good chaos, but it can get out of control without that balance with the structure and the anchoring of the masculine, where she anchors the emotional, he anchors that. And so what we're seeing now is people are coming into the Sophia Christos again. When we do that within ourselves, that gets reflected in our outer world. So for example, I heal my divine feminine, I step back into my Sophia, I take that masculine that's healing and healing the old wounds and providing the strength. Like many women, just in general, here I am going to be gendered. women in our world today are so masculinized we don't even realize it, because even just living in a rectangle or a square is masculine, right? Having a schedule, leaving the home to go do things to make money to provide is masculine oriented. So many women don't even realize how masculinized they are. But as we bring that divine inner masculine, divine inner feminine in union, we then find that we're kind of like a whole new being. And because of where we are historically, where we are technology wise, information wise, and where we are in the universe, the energies around, we are a whole new being. We are that celestial body. We are that light body, or more towards that light body. And we transcend the duality of masculine, feminine. Instead of saying masculine or feminine, it's more like saying masculine and feminine plus, right? So we transcend, we elevate, we evolve. And that's what ascendance really is all about. And that's what we're seeing, is we're seeing ascension happening. We're seeing in some ways what many people are saying is like the bifurcation of the third world, third dimensional world, from what's always been here, but we couldn't see or experience it, the 5D. And I would even argue to say 6D as well, but that's another podcast. So yeah, that's what Sophia Christos is. That's one way of putting it.
You said like where we are universally. So tell me or tell us what you mean by that. Like, where are we in
In the universe. In the universe. Um, I don't have an easy way to explain that outside of saying sort of like where our galaxy is, we're moving towards the center of the universe, but how is anybody supposed to know that, right? But if you look at if that's like some literal way of thinking about it, and you look at that macrocosm as a reflection of the microcosm within, if we are moving into the center of our being, then we are moving into the center of our universe, right? When we're in the center of our being, we are in our highest self. We are in our heart space, right? So we are in a higher frequency than we ever have been before, because, I mean, I don't know about 10,000 plus years ago. I can't speak to much like ancient Egypt and beyond, but um, to my understanding, the level of knowledge was kind of different. The type of knowledge was different, but the level of knowledge, the access to knowledge, has never been what it is today before. Like I said, even our grandmothers, like my grandmother would not believe that this rectangle
Right.
in my
Yeah.
hand is everything that it is. And to my great grandparents, that would be a foreign object altogether. So it's only been in the last like 50 years, even less than that, 25, 30 years, that we've had the technology that we've had, and we've not known borders, separation the same exact way. Because, I mean, heck, the younger generations that have grown up with a device in their hand have been able to touch that rectangle and talk to somebody on the other side of the
Yeah.
planet with an interpreter. And it didn't matter what their race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexuality, political ideas. It didn't matter. It was the fact that they could go past all of those boundaries and barriers and get to know a person for the person. So we have more of a universal sort of the way I see like our Native American ancestors did, where we were all one brotherhood, all one sisterhood, and then the hoop broke, according to them, right? And so now their prophecies are coming true because the hoop is being repaired.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons it is being repaired is technology advancement that provides us connection. As much as there is the challenge of disconnection and impersonal, we also have the other end of that spectrum as well.
Yep. Just even being exposed to more, like you said, just expands, what.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I minored in anthropology when I was an undergrad, and one of the things that I found really fascinating in anthropology was the 100th monkey effect. Right. So one of the things they proved just through the 100th monkey effect was that when a group is given a new tool, consciousness raises
Mhm.
because of that quantum. Now
Yeah.
we understand because of that quantum connection of that collective.
Yeah. I just have to share this with you. We have some similarities. I'm a therapist. Um,
Fantastic.
and my major in undergrad was anthropology. And very wide open empath, thought I was crazy for many, many years in my life until somebody said,
All this sounds familiar.
yeah, yeah, until somebody's like, oh, you're an empath. I'm like, what does that mean?
Mm,
I definitely did not have the traumatic experiences that you shared, but just interesting that share a lot of similarities. And
yes.
I started last year channeling a divine feminine collective that call themselves
Mm-hmm.
the Mystic Rose Collective, and
Ah,
very
yep,
much feel like their purpose is to bring in more of that divine feminine
yes,
energy and
yes,
share that frequency
yep.
with people.
And I became a Rose Path initiate last year with this beautiful lady, Alethea Pistis Sophia in the south of France.
Okay.
Yeah, and she taught us all about the symbolism of the rose and how it
Mhm.
survived, you know, all this time, and
Mhm.
the cross-cultural connections of the ancient world, and how that is about the divine feminine and
Yeah.
how it was lost and turned into just the flower.
Yeah.
And now it's opening again.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
Very,
interesting.
very interesting. Yes, 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 yes. And I do see, even since I see in 2023, I had a post-operative stroke in the visual cortex of my brain, the occipital lobe, and I had central vision loss. And so when I was in the hospital, they had me in the hospital for 11 days to do testing to figure out like why I had the stroke. And I was like using my peripheral vision to do research to find out like how do I rehabilitate this, because I'm not going to accept the diagnosis they were giving me, especially after missing the golden window because I thought I was having an ocular migraine. So I found out that the way to rehabilitate that vision was to do visual arts. So I started, doing art, and I had always done a little bit of art and loved it, but I wasn't really, what the world would say good. And when I got home from the hospital, I had time before returning back to work, and I was like, okay, I need to like keep working on this, because by the time I left the hospital, I was already regaining some vision. And here's how I knew that, and this is kind of humorous. With that central vision loss, it wasn't like a black hole in the middle of my vision. It was that there would be a blank, and my brain would fill that space in with whatever colors were nearby. So my brain, when I was looking at a face, you didn't have a nose and you didn't have part of your mouth. So everybody looked kind of like Voldemort from Harry Potter. And by the time I left the hospital, I was already seeing almost the whole mouth. And when I would turn my head a little bit, I could see the nose as I would turn my head, and I didn't have to turn it all the way. So I knew I was making progress. So when I got home, I was like, I want to do a whole series, a collection of some kind. And it hit me to paint the 22 major arcana of the tarot. And I lived out every damn card as I painted it in acrylic
Oh, wow.
in real time, down to I was in the middle of painting the tower card and the devil card when the ex walked in and we had the breakup conversation. So I was like, ugh, right. When I got done, I named the collection The Return of the Divine Feminine because I was inspired as I was using, the Rider Waite deck as my visual inspiration, to flip anything that was white, I shifted it to black. If it was a masculine looking figure, I shifted it to a feminine. So the 22 major arcana in my painting collection all are feminine, and the emperor remains the masculine emperor, but he has tattoos that represent the divine feminine on his hands. So I decided to name it The Return of the Divine Feminine. I had no idea what I was didn't know what I was getting myself into.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
I love that.
yeah. And it's a crazy, I mean, I regained about 95% of my vision, and the little
Incredible.
5% that's still gone, it's more like it's a gift rather than a problem because
Yeah.
it gives me a depth. Like if you could see my quote unquote art before and after, you'd be like, whoa, what happened? Because I look like a master painter after that.
Wow.
And so there was this depth to the art that wasn't there before. And there's a depth to my clairvoyance that I didn't have before.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see in all the things that you've been through, so you've had a lot of you've it sounds like just childhood trauma, physical trauma. Do you see a purpose in that, or do you feel like
Yep.
these are just things that happen to me?
I definitely see purpose, multiple purposes, in fact. One, I think a lot of times we go through major adversities and traumas to crack us open.
Hmm.
It's kind of like saying the balloon has to have a weight to anchor it. And so if you come into this world a high frequency being and you came here with a strong purpose, you've got to have something that anchors you here for the time until you remember who you are, where you can then anchor yourself, because this is a dense world. Um, so I think there's a lot of purposes. One, I was meant to do the work I do. I was meant to speak on this. I was meant to remember how to heal myself, remember that I can trust my own inner knowing. And then, and I don't know fully yet what this means, but I was told that the tone of my voice, and I don't know if that means the sound or the tone of what I'm saying, the message that's coming through, or both. But the tone of my voice is what's helping activate some of that dormant DNA for the divine feminine. So I think all of it kind of, in the meaning making, right? Because that's a big part of the healing process. Um, Healing from trauma, well, healing from anything that has been, adversive in any way. The meaning making process all came because I feel like I had spiritual resiliency to begin with. Now, I know that many people might not have that, but what I can say is it's never too late to get some.
Hmm.
And it really just comes back to, it doesn't have to be religious oriented, but if that's your jam, then go with it. But find the deeper understandings, do the research. There's a reason, even the Bible, it says, study to show thyself approved unto the Lord, not to man, to the Lord. So basically, what that's saying is, you will have deeper understanding if you just study. And if you're told what you can and cannot study, you need to reclaim your sovereignty and study it anyways. If you're told don't look over there, look over there.
Hmm.
Right? Yeah. So I definitely have to say that in the meaning making, in the spiritual resiliency that got me through all the things that I've gotten through that were hard, that were difficult, that spiritual resiliency is the very thing that informed me of who I am
Hmm.
at my highest level.
Hmm. You said in your answers to us that I have overcome what was created to destroy me. Now I know why. It's because what wanted me destroyed is threatened by my spiritual resiliency. So, what
Yes.
was that? What was created to destroy you?
Well, the same thing that's created to destroy many people who are high frequency, who do carry a very powerful message and very powerful energy. That's not to put myself on some hierarchy. I don't see it that way. I think we're kind of adjacent. We just all have different roles and such. But it's almost like when I look back on everything, and I recently wrote an article that's been published a couple of times about my story and the fib of Nochi spirituality, right? When I look back on everything, I can see all the cultural conditioning that has been purposefully pushed, right, to keep people from, rising up against the quote powers that were. I'm going to talk about it in past tense. Um, the the times that I was physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, energetically attacked just because I was being me, not because I did anything wrong, just because I'm a mirror for some people. And if you don't want to look in the mirror, you're not going to like me. you're going to project your shit onto me, thinking it's me. And for a long time, I did think that that was the reason people didn't like me. And it wasn't that reason at all. Um, there have been, many stories out there of people who have intense energy, who have that higher frequency energy, who have that big spiritual purpose, that have been through adversity after adversity, trauma after trauma, attack after attack, and have had to push through things like the cultural conditioning and the control systems and stand in the face and say, you don't own me. You don't control me. And where do you get those nads, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
You get those nads from staring down the barrel of a gun, so to speak. So the next time somebody puts a gun in your face, you're like, and
I think going back to what you had said earlier about like being a teenager and just wanting to fit in and everything like that, what's coming to me is like your frequency was just so different from other people's. And so there's this like, I think this energetic repulsion to what doesn't match us, right?
yep.
But through no fault of your own, obviously. It's just kind of like this natural thing that happens when we are not an energetic match. And so
Yep.
you going through the experiences of finding people who were part of your tribe who matched your frequency a little bit better allowed you to be, it was safer for you to be yourself and not try
Mm-hmm.
to have to like mask
Mm-hmm.
yourself, to fit
Yeah.
in with other people who weren't on the same wavelength as you. Does that kind of
Mm-hmm.
fit?
Mm-hmm. Which, yeah, as a teen, I did mask a lot, and it was exhausting and, you know, gut wrenchingly, our emotions as a teenager are multiplied times a million. So it was difficult. And now what I see is when I have experiences like that, to me, that's discernment. That's redirection.
Mhm.
It
Yes,
says
I agree.
that, and even when I have new clients come in, I do a free 15-minute consultation first. If it doesn't sit right with me, then I refer them to someone who I feel like can help them, that those skill sets of those other therapists might be more favorable for that person, because I have made the mistake of just taking somebody in to fill my caseload early on, and then, they're like 6 weeks in and they just drop off, or they find some reason to try to pick a fight with me. And that's not the same as somebody who is having some kind of cathartic experience, or,
Yeah.
that there's a difference when you know that a client is, even though they may be doing that transference, they may be doing some of that projection, you can sense the difference between that and an actual attack if you've ever had trauma, right? So, I have learned that if I feel uncomfortable in a place, then I was meant to notice that I was uncomfortable and leave.
Yep. Yep.
If I'm
Yeah.
uncomfortable
Trusting
around a
yourself.
person,
Yep.
I do the same thing. I have a reason to go another direction. And doesn't mean that person's bad.
Yeah.
It
No.
doesn't necessarily mean the place is bad. I
Yeah.
mean, good and bad are really human definition,
Sure.
human judgments. But
Agreed.
but yeah, it's more like it gives me a sense of navigation these
Yep.
days that I didn't have as a teen.
Yep. That makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not everyone has to be for everyone. You know, so everybody's for someone, but not necessarily for you specifically or for me.
Yeah.
Right, right, exactly.
Sometimes
I'm
we
not
have ways of
everybody's
telling
cup of
ourselves
tea,
that.
and I might be
What?
a few people's shot of whiskey, but I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and I know
I love
it. And not
What?
everybody's for me, like for real. Like
Yeah,
that is a
Absolutely.
for sure.
testament to say that,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that they can't teach me something, because they
Sure.
definitely are. Just in
Sure.
me going, oh, like I don't feel comfortable around this person, or they make my nervous system feel on edge, or
Yep.
whatever. If my inner knowing is there's a lesson here for me, then I try to stay with it, regulate myself, and kind of explore what that is. But if I am beyond, that's kind of like that tipping point where you're like, yeah, I can't really access my inner knowing too well right now because my nervous system is dysregulated, that means I need to go the other way.
Yep.
Something you said a couple of minutes ago that I thought was kind of interesting is you thought whenever you're going through these things, you said that you're kind of remembering kind of who you are. So
Hmm.
does that mean that you maybe think that something comes before this? Like,
So,
are we something before we are who we are now?
okay, so let me take you on a little quick visual. I use this exercise with my clients oftentimes, right? And Brittany, you may know kind of where I'm going with this, but so I want you to imagine something really powerful that you've experienced in your life. Just have an image of it in your head, right? Like a snapshot. So you're going to take that snapshot out of your brain and you're going to shrink it down to the size of an old projector slide and put it in the palm of your hand and you're going to hold it. Okay. You're going to walk into a dark theater with that slide in your hand. Nobody's in there but you, and the curtains are across the screen. The lights are dim, and you notice that at the bottom of the theater screen is a little slot that says put slide here. So you put your slide in, you go take a seat, you got your popcorn and your Coke or whatnot, and you're sitting there and the lights go darker, the curtains open, and then boom, there's your image, bigger than life on the screen. So here you are looking at this image in detail, remembering the experience, remembering the feelings associated with it, and you're eating your popcorn and sipping your Coke, and you're having this experience of just this bigger than life memory in a visual form. Now I want you to see yourself standing behind you, and you are looking at you sitting in the seat in front of you, looking at the screen, eating your popcorn and sipping your soda, and you can see that you're having an emotional reaction to what's on the screen. So the question here is, who is the you that is standing? How can you be in both places at once, right? One of you is your observer person, your observer self, your consciousness that can be observing of what you're doing, feeling, sensing, seeing, thinking, everything, right? The one that can say, I see that I'm experiencing the feeling of anger, rather than the one sitting in the seat going, I'm pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
Because the one sitting in the seat is going to identify with that feeling, whereas the observer can say, I see that I'm having that experience. So the observer you is kind of like in DBT, Brittany, where you kind of go back and forth between logic and reason and then emotion. So you've got like your logical mind, your emotional mind, and you have that dialectic, and eventually you come to a new dialectic
Wise mind.
idea, and that's where wise mind is. So in my mind, when we go into wise mind, that's a state of consciousness where we tap into the awareness of being eternal. What is that is that we're aware of? Many people would say it's an energy, it's a consciousness, it's spirit, soul, oversoul, higher self. You can name it what you want, but most people, when you tap into that space, it's a transcendent kind of experience. And when you're in those kind of states of consciousness, like I'm a second generation Maslowian, which is really cool to be able to say. But he talked about the peak experience, right? That sense of oneness with all. And people have those experiences for different reasons at different times in their lives. And when you have that kind of experience, you have this sense of connection and eternity that's at the same time, right? So, whatever we are, right? I do believe that whatever, we'll just say whatever, that whatever we are, that whatever is packed full of information already before coming into this physical dimension we call Earth. And I think many of us came here with knowledge and skills, advanced knowledge and skills to help Earth. to help humanity at
Mhm.
large. Now, yeah, we've got some NPCs hanging out, but we're just going to leave that there. Does that answer your question, John?
Yeah, that was a great
Okay.
explanation for sure.
Yeah.
And any listeners interested in what Maslowian means, you can Google Abraham Maslow, and the hierarchy of needs is
Yes,
where you would start. That would be its own series of podcasts if you were to start to get into that. But
absolutely.
it's interesting stuff for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, my founding father of our psychology department here studied directly under Maslow.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Oh,
he was a
that's
great, and he
super,
was a
super
great
interesting.
professor,
That's
Dr.
awesome.
Cool.
Mike Ahrens.
It's very cool. So I feel like there's a million things that we could continue to talk to you about. And I'm
Absolutely.
enjoying listening to you very much. But
Thank you.
before we wrap up tonight, I do want to ask you about your experiences with ETs. You're the first
Mm.
person we've talked to who says you've had a Bigfoot experience. So I want to hear about that and
Yes.
talking to MUFON. So take us there.
Okay, so it really like I think the Bigfoot thing actually started when my sister and I were young, and we lived in a very rural area in Alabama and had these woods near our, in our yard basically. And we kind of knew like where the parameters of the property were, so we wouldn't actually get lost, but we would go and pretend to get lost. But we knew that, when we'd go on these like hiking adventures and explorations, all this, right? But we knew we were always safe because Monkey Bear was with us watching over us. And didn't think about that for years and years. And then I think it was a dream I had about some Sasquatch, and I woke up saying Monkey Bear, and I was like, is that what my sister? So I called my sister and I was like, do you remember when we would do this and we would say Monkey Bear was watching over us? And I said, do you think that was Sasquatch? And she said, I bet it was. So I had that what I will now categorize as interdimensional experiences that children often have, that if adults would quit saying that's not real, we might have a better world. Just saying.
Yep.
Years later, my son and I would go out to the national forest and ride around on the dirt roads. That's where I taught him how to drive. I won't say what age, but taught him how to drive. And there was this one little road that just kind of dead ended, and you had to turn around and come back out. Pretty dang treacherous. So you had to learn how to maneuver to do this road. And there was this cave on this road, and part of the road went over a series of creeks, right? And the very last bridge off to that gets turned around, I think north. The north, yeah, because the water flowed the other way. Anyways, was there was this weird cave that always gave me the heebie-jeebies. Right? It gave me this weird feeling. And my son, he's very intuitive, very sensitive as well, and he was always like, oh, that makes me think about Bigfoot and da 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 da. So we always kind of had laughed and we called it Sasquatch Road. So we are driving down that road one day, and I'm just like randomly snapping pictures because I'm like, maybe I'll catch a Bigfoot. And like, I'd go home and look at them later, see if I could find something, and I couldn't for the longest time. And then there's this one day I get a picture. When I zoom in, there's an angle that caught my eye at first, and it was an L-shaped angle that doesn't typically happen in nature, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a fallen tree or something like that,
Yeah.
broken limb. And as I'm looking at it, I'm like, that kind of looks like an elbow. And then I'm looking more, and just above the elbow, you could see a brow and a bit of a cone-shaped top of the head. And I'm like, oh, and I look, and you can kind of make out what looks like an extended leg. And what I took a picture of, and I sent it to the what was at the time called Alabama Paranormal and Bigfoot Society. Sent a picture of it. Of course, zoomed in. It was grainy, and this was like, God, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, something like that. So even our cameras back then kind of sucked. Um, but I said, is this a possible juvenile Bigfoot? Like, is that? And they, of course, had to do their possible and might be and couldn't verify exactly, right? And so after that, I was just like, oh my God, I got a baby Bigfoot on picture. I got a baby Bigfoot. And so we would go and ride out there all the time trying to catch the big Bigfoot and scared partially and excited partially. And there was this really steep area. Now, this is very kind of like mountainous. And I look up and there's this cinnamon colored something. It's as much as I wanted to see it, it scared the shit out of me. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I look up and there's what appeared very quickly and then was gone. A gigantic orangutan looking thing sitting like a human on a fallen tree almost at the very top of this mountain, like right on the ridge line. And I was like, and I'm like trying to get my phone and my camera, and I turn back, it's gone. And my son was in the passenger seat, so he couldn't even see because I was looking out my window, out my driver's side window, and so he was at an angle where he couldn't see it. And I was like, nobody's ever gonna believe me now.
We believe you.
Yeah.
And so there was this interesting experience that a friend of mine, Matt Vaughn, who wrote the book High Strangeness. Oh, forgive me, Matt, for not remembering. It's published under Cosmic Trigger. I don't know. Anyways, you
Okay.
can look it up. Anyways, he shared some of my monkey bear stories, and in Turkey, I'm known as the monkey bear lady because of it. So he talked about how he shared the story of how I had gone to ride around in the national forest. It was kind of like a little escape place for all of us, right? I'd gone after work after a stressful day. I'm riding around. I drove a black SUV at the time, and I drove to this campground. And there was this little sign right by this campsite, and there was like this light and background set up and like camera on a tripod thing. And the little sign said cryptozoology, and I was like, cryptozoology, and I was like, whoa. So I jump out and I'm like, hey, are y'all looking for Bigfoot? And they all like freeze. Like, what the heck is going on here? And I'm like for real, are y'all looking for Bigfoot? Because I know where he lives and I can show you. And they like acted like I was crazy at first. And they gave me this questionnaire thing, and they're all like looking at me with a side eye and like being real hesitant to approach me much. And I'm like, can I talk to whoever's in charge, please? So they were like, are you sure? And I was like, yes. And so they get on this radio and they call him in. And a few minutes later, here comes this like 6 foot something dude in fatigues, and he's got all this gear on him, and he's all pissed off because like he's been called away from what he was doing, and he was not looking for Bigfoot. He was doing something else that I didn't know about at the time. So find out as we're kind of talking, he said something about he was a student at University of West Georgia and had graduated from the psychology department. I was like, really? When? And he told me, and I don't think he believed me. And he said, well, who were your favorite professors? And I started spitting off names, and he was like, oh. So what he thought, I didn't find out for years later when my friend Matt was like writing his book. He was friends with this guy. The guy was an alumnus. He was at a different time than we were. And the guy was a paranormal investigator, had had military experience, and was investigating something else that I won't go into right now. But uh, he he said, he told my friend Matt, this woman drove up in a black SUV, got out in a black pantsuit, and started asking for the leader. And they thought I was a government worker or
Yeah.
CIA or men in
Yeah.
black, woman in black, something, right? And that's why he was like, University of West Georgia. Well, what professors do you know? Like
Yeah.
they were trying to like counter me, and I was like, no, I'm not that. But the crazy thing is, because of my timing, they were pulled away just in time because what they were doing could have actually gotten them killed in that moment.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
it was
I
crazy.
mean, you
Yeah.
can't leave us hanging and not tell us. Can you tell us if we stop recording?
Uh, well, I mean, you could look at his book and get some information, but I
Okay.
don't have enough information to tell you exactly what it was, but they had an
Mhm.
experience in this particular area that I think is probably a vortex spot,
Mhm.
um, where it was like a portal and something was
Mhm.
coming through that
Okay.
they were investigating and they were curious about. They'd never now in the last few 2-3 years, we I've been seeing some of these things in some of these
Yeah.
UFO
Yeah.
UAP kind of pictures and
Mhm.
reports and stuff.
Yeah.
And so yes, that brings me to UFOs and aliens. And UFOs and Bigfoot go together. Back, I want to say it was like 1996, 97. My sister's, I mean, it was like right after high school for me. I was home, so it would have been like on a break or like during the summer or something. My mom and my sister and I were traveling down the highway near our little town, and this is broad daylight, not a cloud in the sky. We come around a curve, and right there, that the road is parallel to a railroad track. There's a silver disc, like just not hovering, just stuck, like just there, but it's angled almost like it's looking down at the railroad tracks. And I thought, that's weird. What is it? What the heck? We're like, is that it? We were all like, are we seeing this? And my mom was driving, so she slowed way down, and we're all like, we're all seeing this, right? This is like a freaking UFO. And we probably watched it, and I've tried to figure out the timing over and over and over again. And my guess is maybe about 10 seconds.
Mhm.
And it straightened up and then gone just as fast as it could. I was like, that's not of this world.
Yeah.
And it had no, it was just a solid, like, made me think of how liquid mercury kind of looks. Just
Mm.
this solid, there's no lines or anything
Mhm.
like that in it. Right. And I was like, yeah, I don't think that was ours. That was not
Right.
ours. Um, and then after that, I did this deep dive into, like, of course, I got kind of obsessed for a while there about UFOs and
Yeah.
extraterrestrials. Now I realize I've been interacting with them pretty much my whole life and didn't know it because I didn't expect they wouldn't look like little green men at first, right? So I had some experiences over time, but to keep it as concise and short as possible, the most recent thing that happened, and I'm still like kind of wrapping my head around it, is I had this experience that one of my teachers told me was a galactic activation. Now, I still don't fully know exactly what that means. I'm learning, I think. I moved into my apartment, which is a loft apartment in an old textile factory. So I have 15-foot windows. So I
Mhm.
have them a couple on the south end and the west end. And so I see a lot of the sky day and night, right? So usually the bathroom window was the one where you could get the best videos and view of the sky without light pollution because there was a light on the corner. So a lot of times I would like take my phone in there and take videos or look at stuff or whatever. And this one time I didn't have my phone on me. I was so mad about that, so sick. So I'm standing up and the window's to my left, and I see something out of the corner of my eye. So I turn and I look, and I'm like, wow, that's a really bright white star. And so I stood there and I looked at it, and it looked like it was getting bigger. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And I thought, okay, maybe it's a plane or something coming. That's low altitude. That's kind of freaky. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I realized it was something moving toward the building. And I was like, oh, this is going to hit the building. So I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And I didn't know if I needed to duck or stand there or what. And I just kind of like was like mesmerized. And it got about 100 yards out, and it went from a solid circle that I could say solid, I mean like it was very circular, that I could almost see through, to it split in half into two circles, and there was a visible wave of like energy, something, some
Mhm.
vibratory something that pushed the two apart really fast. So it was coming from the west and it split to north and south with this
Mhm.
weird wave. And it felt like something slung in through the window and was over my shoulder. And I was like, what the hell was that experience? I don't know what just happened. I don't have it on video. I don't have any way to understand this.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, there's something that keeps getting my attention, kind of behind my shoulder. There's nothing there. And I kept like, I was scared to use my intuition. So I was like, maybe if I ignored it, it'll go away, kind of thing. And finally, it was like my whole nervous system just instantly regulated. And I was like, what is going on? And it wasn't words, it was images, it was telepathic
Mhm.
communication. And I saw this, what we see depicted often is what looks like Pleiadian. Um, it wasn't like some 7 foot, 9 foot, maybe, but in my mind's eye, it seemed a little shorter. And I think that was maybe so I wouldn't freak out or whatever. But it was a masculine looking being with hair,
Mhm.
white hair. I did see bright blue eyes in what I was shown. And I was like, what are you? Who are you? What are you doing here? Kind of thing. And he was like, I'm a Pleiadian, basically, is what he was saying. I'm showing you I look like a Pleiadian. And that was my understanding of what I was seeing was Pleiadian. And then he showed me the word, and this is how I learned how to like win the spelling bee. I would see the word in my head and then spell it right. I saw the word Onslow, Onslo, that simple in my head because I was like trying to say, like, who are you? What are you doing here? That kind of thing. And he was saying, my name, you can call me Onslow, is that what he was communicating. And he communicated to me that he was there temporarily, that his group tends to come periodically. They come, they stay here for a little bit, they have certain missions, and then they leave, and then they come back. They stay here for a short amount of time, so they don't stay.
Mhm.
They come and visit and leave. And he was letting me know that, there was a lot of information that came in a very short amount of time, but he was basically letting me know that yes, they're real. Yes, you have been communicating with them. Yes, we're giving you help, assistance. We're giving you guidance. Some of you are galactic souls. You are here, birthed into human form to do some of these things. And he was telling me, no, you're not crazy. And it's just, so he would kind of get my attention off and on for a few days, and then he was gone. And after that, I'm like, okay, did I just have like some kind of psychotic break? Let me double check my mental health. So I'm talking to some colleagues that are very close friends that know my mental health. And so far, he's come back one other time, and it was just for an hour or so. And he showed me a feminine that came with him, but the only thing I could see, and it was very third dimensional. The only thing I saw was a hand do this really fast, a
Mm.
little small hand. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, hi, that's kind of creepy, weird, scary, little. But, some of the biggest unnerving experiences are meant to be unnerving to get our attention.
Sure.
So then, he was telling me I'm going to be doing galactic ambassadorship. And I don't know what that means yet. I'm not sure exactly, how you do that and what that is.
Yeah.
But I guess that will be revealed to me in whatever timing it's meant to be revealed.
Yeah.
And I do have connection with the Syrians and the Octurians for sure. And um, what I was shown was that my galactic origins go back to Lyra, that I was like a childlike size at least. I think I was a child, the way it feels when I go back into that, that I was like slingshotted. I guess that's the word you would use, slingshot away. And then there was a boom, and that's where I met my Pleiadian and Syrian kin after that. So I was like, huh, that's kind of weird. And I can look at certain people sometimes, and if I see like a cat-like image
Mm.
on their face, almost like my mind wants to superimpose a cat mask or like, Halloween draw the whiskers on kind of thing, then I'm like, they got Lyrian somewhere in there.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What do you make of like all of the government disclosure that is happening now?
They're giving us enough to give us disinformation
Yeah.
and appease some of the
Okay.
masses. But I think people who, the reality is they can lie to you all they want. They can set up fear narratives all they want, but the real boys can just come in and go, yeah, that's bullshit. And my solid advice is if it feels fearful, it's not true.
Yeah.
If it feels loving, it probably is.
Yep.
Um, I think that they've been pushed to disclose what they have, and they're getting away with the most minimal.
Pushed by
And
whom?
uh, pushed by whomever's in charge of that. That's the way I'll put that.
Okay.
I do know that there are certain, no, I can't say I know that. I will say I would take an educated guess
Mhm.
that there are certain factions on the planet that still want to keep that quiet because of, technology and control and all of that.
Yeah.
And there are some kin that I call them galactic kin, that know where we are,
Mhm.
psychologically, spiritually, that kind of thing. And it's kind of like, yeah, we need to like be kindergartners and ease into this as far as the masses are concerned. But people who've kind of had this connection and this frequency for a long time, um, know that it only takes about 20% of us to tip the scales, and that uh, what is the word? I forgot the word for it. This is gonna drive me crazy now. Anyways, it only takes 20% for that the hundredth monkey effect to kind of start happening. And even just since the year of the fire horse started, we're seeing a lot more awakenings, a lot more people
Yeah.
like, talking about these things rather than being like, oh, they're crazy if they think that,
Yeah.
right? Like we're seeing a lot more acceptance. And
I
the
agree.
movie Disclosure, I look at people who've been in like some of the bigger names I've even noticed are like, yeah, they put some truths in there, they put some lies in there, and kind of at the end, they make you fearful. So that tells me it's a control tactic. It's not really trying to disclose. It is, but it isn't. It's not
Mhm.
trying to do it the way, I think we should. I think we should, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, really, if our galactic kin wanted to, they could just all come pop in, fly in, jump in, and say,
Yeah.
yeah, here we are.
And I
And they
feel
kind of
like,
have been in a
right, that's what I was
way.
gonna say. I feel like they are. And I
Yeah.
feel like, people like you who are having these activations or like, so many more people are opening up to channeling, for example, as they're awakening and they're connecting with, Lemurians or, Pleiadians or and whatnot. But um yeah, I mean, I think
It's funny that you said Lemurian when I thought you were trying to say Lyran, and I'm like, there's a connection there, though.
yeah,
There's definitely that
yeah,
connection.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
actually, as I said, I'm like, I'm not sure that's what I was trying to say, but that's what came
Well,
out.
I
So
love that it happened. I
yeah,
love that that happened, though, because as an Earth Grid worker, I have that Lemurian rootstock. They were the
yeah,
songline keepers, the
yeah.
Lemurians. So, yeah, I have that connection there too.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'm just happy we got to the Bigfoot stories. Honestly, that was
Yeah.
gonna be my next
Same.
You're,
iteration for
oh,
sure.
the Bigfoot story. I didn't hear you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I still like, there's a part of me when I think back to the big orangutan thing goes, did I really see that? Right? Like I keep second guessing it,
Mhm.
but I know I did. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have had the reaction I did if I
Yeah.
had. I mean, you can have, well, I hate the word imagination. I really do. I don't like the way it's been used and the way it's been painted. It is definitely, I like Einstein. He kind of like said, without imagination, man cannot know God. So basically, that what that's saying is, how would you be able to believe in anything unseen with your physical eyes if you didn't have a way to like have a mental construct of something,
Mhm.
you know? So, it's undervalued. We've been
Yeah.
told, well, there's a reason we've been told it's not very valuable, right? Because what
Yeah.
if everybody used it in the proper way?
Right.
Yeah.
Not as easy to control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Take back that sovereignty. So I say take some Ormus gold, knock off all of that oxidation, keep the crystalline structures, and use your pineal gland, people.
Wonderful. This has been a very wonderful, fascinating conversation. Like I said, we could talk to you for hours and
Oh God, I could keep going too. You can
but
split it up into 2 or 3 different podcasts.
we appreciate you coming on and talking with
Absolutely.
us. Is there any place if people want to follow you and as you're, talking more and sharing your message more, is there a place people can follow you?
Right now, the best way to reach me is through my Psychology Today
Okay.
profile. Because if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, you will see like there's energy healing modalities, and
Hmm.
you see the shamanic influence, you see all of that. I had started up the Sanctuary of Crystal Sophia, and it kind of got redirected in a way because it was meant to, because I will be doing at some point a podcast along with some courses with that. But the person who was developing the business side of things and the website was a huge lesson in discernment for me. So I'm starting at square one with that now at this
Okay.
point, and hopefully I'll have that launched by eh, maybe the fall, late fall, you know. But Psychology Today, I'm also on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. I can give you guys my links and all of that. And I have a link to the article that I got published about the Fibonacci
Okay.
spirituality. Yeah. And
Perfect.
that'll kind of help you understand. If you read it, then you'll
Hmm.
understand what I mean by Fibonacci spirituality.
Okay. Awesome. Well,
Right.
thank you so much. We really appreciate this conversation.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you for thoughtful questions. It's like some people are like, they have these preconceived notions and they stick to it instead of going with the flow of the conversation and then saying, hey, you said something I want to go back to, and
Yeah.
then it's you had a well thought out question. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, yeah. Strange stories.